Hello, hope you're doing well. So October is of course the incredibly festive month of Halloween, but I've also been informed that in some parts of the world it's actually LGBT History Month as well. Now, I flunked out of history in school, so I'm not really the person to go to for any in-depth LGBT history knowledge, but I would like to encourage any of you guys who are interested to maybe take a look at some resources and learn a bit about the past events and historic moments that brought the LGBT community to where we are today. LGBT people have certainly not walked an easy road throughout history, and there's still a long way left to go, that's for sure, but it is still pretty inspiring to see how far we've already come in such a relatively short period of time. Anyway, with all that in mind, it being both the season of spooks and a notable month on the LGBT calendar, I wanted to draw up some seasonal designs that embody the spirit of Halloween while also just being pretty gay. Let's get started. So I got the idea for this set of designs when I was looking online for like gay Halloween shirts and stuff like that, both as inspiration for this video and also just because I could always do with expanding my festive wardrobe. And one design concept that I saw on a lot of sites in a bunch of different styles was the phrase "ride with pride," which was normally accompanied by a very simple witch silhouette and a rainbow of some kind. I like the idea and the phrase itself, but all of the actual designs I saw on these sites were pretty basic. And you could tell they were probably not done by a professional artist or designer because the layouts and font choices were kinda weird. So while I was a bit disheartened that I couldn't find any spooky pride merch that I really liked, I didn't let it get me down. Instead, I reminded myself of a very motivational motto for these kind of situations, which is, if you don't like it, just make your own. Which thankfully, as an artist, is something I can do. So I decided to take that concept, that starting point, and run with it, put my own spin on it, and see what I could come up with. Since character design is my favourite thing to do, I thought it would be fun to make a set of custom witchy characters based on each of the pride flags in the LGBT acronym. It seemed like a good chance to represent a bunch of different aesthetics, and it's always a challenge to work with a specific colour palette. I wasn't sure quite where to begin with these designs, so I decided to just go in order of the LGBT acronym, because that's as good a starting point as any. So first off, let's go, lesbians. The lesbian flag, I think there are a couple of different versions of it, or at least that's what Google seemed to say, so I ended up just using the one that seemed like it would be the most fun to work with in terms of the colour palette itself. Like I said at the start, I'm not a history buff by any means, so hopefully all my lesbian sisters out there, this is still a design you can enjoy and I haven't made some kind of terrible mistake. For this character anyway, I wanted her to be somewhere between girly and a bit more rough and tumble, so I gave her a cute, fun pose and expression, but also some torn up jeans and sturdy boots. I think her design came together quite well to give off a pretty lively impression, which I'm quite happy about. Originally, I had thought it might be cool to colour these characters in flag order, so in this case it would have been red hat, orange hair, white shirt, and so on and so on. But this design ended up looking a lot cooler with the colours rearranged and just put wherever they fit best. So that's the method I ended up using for most of the other designs in this set. I will say though, I had a lot of fun colouring her eyes using just the colours from the flag's palette. If you've been following my work for a while, you'll know that I really like doing the pupil in a brighter colour than the rest of the eye, and this worked really nicely for that. One thing you'll also notice going forward is that all of these characters have cats. This was to give each of the designs a bit more of an interesting composition, so there's more than one thing happening in each picture, there's more than one line of sight. I did consider giving each character a different animal like an owl or a frog, but at the end of the day, cats are the most widely recognised witchy companion and also the easiest for me to draw, so the choice was pretty easy to make. And now onto my own demographic, gay men. I knew right off the bat that this one was going to be tricky, because normally when making a character design, it's a good idea to try and limit your main palette to just a couple of similar or complementary colours to keep everything from getting too busy. But with this particular flag, I was working with almost every colour at very high saturation. But we can talk about the colouring in a second. First comes the character design itself. My first thought was to make a character with that kind of pastel, soft boy aesthetic that you can often see in fandom artwork and shipping fan art and stuff like that. If you have no idea what I'm talking about with that, then just imagine a twink in a flower crown, because that kind of design can be very aesthetically pleasing. However, while that kind of aesthetic can be very cute, there are also just a lot of those kind of character designs out there already. So much so that sometimes it can almost feel like it's one of the only options there is. So I felt like it might be good to go against my first idea on this one and do something a bit more loud and proud instead. Besides which, sometimes a man just wants to draw a himbo and you cannot deny that kind of energy. What I ended up with was a character who looks like a bro from the world's most overtly homo frat house, and I kinda love it. Like, he looks like he just finished his session at the gym and then dived directly into a pride parade. It's very fun. And even though I could still have gone with a more soft pastel version of the flag's palette for this design, and even though it probably would have been easier for me on the colouring front if I had done that, I ended up just going full throttle and full saturation, because it seemed like it would suit the character a lot better. I think any artist will tell you that trying to make a rainbow-themed character is something that's very difficult to do well. This can be especially true if you're a younger artist, as if you're just starting out, it can be very easy to fall into the mindset that every single section of a design needs to be a different, super bright colour for it to stand out. But if you overwhelm your design with too many colours in too many places, it just makes everything unreadable. To make sure all these colours didn't overwhelm this design, I didn't feature them on every part of it. Instead, I only applied the rainbow to his crop top and the ribbon of his hat, and then grounded those colours by making everything else black and white. In this way, I was able to still effectively limit my palette while making the colours that mattered stand out and draw the right amount of focus. I also put a rainbow coloured overlay onto his broom, because I kept imagining it looking like one of those fibre optic lamps with all the strands. I couldn't quite depict that fully here because it wouldn't match the art style, but it's a really fun mental image. Next up, we've got B for bisexual. Although, pansexuals, any of the other parts of the community who overlap with this one, or who overlap with any of the designs I'm doing in this video, shout out to you as well. As much as I wish I could, I'm not able to draw a design for every flag for every faction of the LGBT community because there are so many, but I hope you can at least enjoy these ones I am able to do and know that, like, we see you, you're out here, and I hope you're having a nice day, however you identify. Anyway, this character's design was heavily inspired by a shirt that one of my friends has that just says, "Bad puns and finger guns" in the bisexual colours. Pretty much as soon as I started designing this one, I knew that that had to be the basis for it. I wanted this character to give off a very chilled out, little bit cheeky vibe, so I put them in a pretty relaxed pose sitting back on their broom that would allow me to also incorporate those finger guns that make it look like they just finished telling a corny joke. For this character, unlike the first two, I didn't want to give them a fully flag-coloured shirt, and instead gave them a tri-coloured stripe across a black base. This was both for the sake of giving these characters a bit of variety, but also because I wanted this one to be fairly fashionable looking, so I gave them a denim jacket which would have clashed with a more brightly coloured undershirt. I do actually really like the outfit on this design. I think it lends itself really well to the chilling out with style kind of vibe that I was going for with this character, and I'm also glad that I didn't forget to cuff their jeans. I realise as well with this design that I did actually revert back a bit to the idea I had of doing the colouring in flag order. Blue jeans, purple jacket across their midsection, pink ribbon on the hat. In the end, the flag for this one ended up being a pretty handy template for where to put the colours. Next up, we've got my other demographic, trans people. Obviously, I had plenty of options I could have gone with for this design. MTF, non-binary, FTM, so many other kinds of people under the trans banner, but in the end, I really wanted to draw a trans woman character for this one. Both because I have a couple of trans feminine and questioning friends who are super lovely and kind, and I wanted to try and represent some of their goodness in this design, but also because, self-indulgent though this batch of designs absolutely is, this is still for LGBT History Month, and trans people, in particular trans women of colour, have consistently been fighting at the forefront of LGBT history, and they do not get enough recognition. Go respect your local trans person today, y'all. Anyway, that's probably enough super serious PSAs for this video, so onto the design itself. It can be really hard as a trans person to have confidence in yourself and your appearance, so I wanted this character to give off the complete opposite energy to that and just look super cool and super comfortable with herself. The concept for this character's design was the first one I came up with for this set. I had a really clear image in my mind for what kind of outfit I wanted to draw and the kind of hairstyle I thought would be cool. And right from the initial sketch up till this final version, the features of it didn't change at all. On the other hand though, this character was actually the one I ended up drawing the most rough poses for in my sketchbook before finally settling on one that I liked. I wanted her to look really graceful and cool, while also leaving enough room to show off her long hair and incorporate the design's text, so there were a lot of factors to bear in mind. I'd also already done 3 designs by this point and I was starting to run out of pose ideas, but I'm really happy with the one I ended up using. The flag palette for this one also ended up being one of my favourites to work with. Although I'd had the character's look in hand from the get-go, I hadn't quite pinned down which colours would go exactly where until I started colouring it digitally. The very limited palette of pastel pink and blue was really satisfying to play around with and see come together, especially since it complemented this character's skin tone really nicely and gave everything a kind of sweet cotton candy vibe. On that note, I also gave her a colourful little drink to hold, purely for the very silly reason that at my old job there was a slushie machine that had either pink or blue syrup, and this flag's colours always remind me of that. But, you know, I mean, it adds to the look as well. It's fashion, it's fine. And last but certainly not least, we've got the Asexuals. How ace is that? Yeah, that's an understandable reaction to that pun. Moving on. This is another character design where the vibe I was going for was very much inspired by some friends of mine who reside in this part of the community. Just real cool, chill people who again deserve more recognition than they get. For this design, I started with a more classically witchy looking idea for the outfit, but then put a retro fashion kind of spin on it, turning what was once an almost Kiki's Delivery Service style dress in my initial drawings into a long turtleneck with puffy sleeves, leggings, and some very cool boots. Because of the pose I drew this character in, I was also able to use a very handy technique whereby I drew their left side limbs on separate linework layers, before duplicating those layers and transforming them in order to make up the opposite limbs. I definitely recommend using this technique if you're working digitally and you're having a bit of a tough time getting body parts to match up. Even if, for example, a character's arms are in completely different positions, depending on the angle you're working at, it can be really helpful to rearrange a copy of an arm that you've already drawn well into a base that you can draw on top of. Being able to chop and change your drawing like that is definitely one of the perks of digital illustration. Since the majority of this flag is monochrome, in black, white and grey, the challenge with this palette came in the form of deciding where to put the purple so that it would balance out nicely with the rest of those tones. Originally, I sketched this design to have a lot more purple in it, but in the end I took a similar route to the gay flag design and chose to put the most saturated colour just on her torso and her hat, adding an additional splash of colour to her face in this instance with her purple glasses and lipstick. I also opted to only use the grey of the flag for her hair and her gloves, so that the rest of her outfit could stay nicely coordinated. I think my favourite part of this character's design was her hairstyle, since it also ended up being the most fun one out of this whole set. The shape of it was really satisfying to draw since it puffs out to the sides a lot more than a standard bob haircut. Though it probably helps that I also just love silver and grey hair in general. The fact that I knew I wanted to give her a black cat also really helped with colour picking, since I knew I needed to choose a colour for her sleeves that the cat wouldn't get lost against, and I was able to think outwards from there. And with that, this set of designs is complete. I ended up liking these characters a lot more than I expected to, so I might work with them again in the future, at least for fashion sketches or something like that. But for now at least, I hope they've managed to work their magic and help you feel a bit more festive and a damn sight more proud. Like I said at the start, these designs were pretty heavily motivated by the fact that I couldn't find any Halloween-y Pride merch that I actually liked, so these designs are all going to be available on my Redbubble store on a bunch of different items in case any of you guys want to pick them up for yourself. Links for that are going to be in the description below, and if you have any favourites, let me know in the comments. For now though, thanks very much for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time.